Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Business by Referral Podcast. I am Virginia Muzquiz, your host, and today I am here with Denice Hinden. She is a leadership coach and an organizational advisor with over 25 years of experience helping mission-driven leaders grow, primarily through trusted relationships and referrals. As the co-founder of Managence Coaching, she works with leaders to navigate transitions, strengthen their leadership, and build healthier, more effective organizations using a neuroscience-based and neurodiversity-informed approach. She's led nearly 150 strategic planning engagements, is a published author, and was named Industry Partner of the Year in 2022. Do you ever go by Dr. Denice? Because I just want to call you Dr. Denice.
I do sometimes, yes.
You got that PhD after your name, but you're not using it. Like,
I love that.
I'm going to dub you Dr. D. All right. So welcome to the show, Denice.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here, Virginia. And thank you for the nice introduction too.
Yeah, it's almost like you wrote it yourself, right? Either that or Liz, my production manager, is really good with Claude. Listen, I'm so excited to have you on this show. And I love the topic of leadership. I think everything rises and falls on leadership. You know, John Maxwell has said that time and again. And yet it's such an underdeveloped skill in so many of us. How did you get on the leadership coaching path? And when did you become an entrepreneur and why?
Wow, those are two big questions.
They are.
Let me start with the second one first, the entrepreneurial path. I was a leader in the nonprofit sector in children, youth, and family services for about 17 years. And when I finished graduate school, a mentor and coach of mine said, you ought to leave Florida, go look for the next right job for yourself. And that led me to a really great opportunity in developing leaders in the affordable housing space and a job in Baltimore. And I didn't really know anyone in Baltimore, Maryland. And I, at the time, answered a personal ad in a newspaper. And this was before dating services were online.
I swear I wanted to just start singing the Pina Colada song.
And I met the person who has been my best friend and partner and husband for 27 years and husband for 24 years.
Wow, from a personal ad.
Yeah, even from a personal ad. Larry, so talk about networking and relationships, you know. He is an entrepreneur, and when he met me, I was the program director at a national nonprofit organization, and he was watching what I was doing and looking at the money that I was earning. And he said, you know, I think I could help you do this for a lot of organizations. Would you be willing to try that? I had never considered the idea of being an entrepreneur myself. And after I called my mother and she said, you're going to do what? You're going to leave your job. You're going to go do something with a gentleman that you just met and you're going to open a business. What is that all about? I said, yes, I'm going to take a leap of faith. And so Larry and I started Managence Coaching, and he continues to this day to be my business partner. And it's been just a labor of love for all of these years since then. And I've loved being an entrepreneur. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been just a really fun journey. And in the process, I've made a living and helped a few hundred organizations and hundreds of leaders in the process.
I love that. And I'm just going to put like bold letters on it hasn't always been easy. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that people who come out of organizations and want to jump on the entrepreneurial bus really think that their zone of genius is enough. And they never really understand as an employee what the employer is actually doing for you behind the scenes with the admin and the accounting and the marketing and the acquisition and all of that. And so it's super interesting. My daughter has built a top dog grooming salon in our town, and her employees now act certain ways. And she'll come to me and say like, oh, they're acting blah, blah, blah. And I said, let's go back to your corporate grooming days. And she's like, oh, you're right. I did do that. And I said, do you remember when you used to do this? She goes, oh my gosh, I did do that. I said, that is just what employees do. Like, and your job is to lead them out of those behaviors. Your job is to lead them into a feeling of co-ownership of this place, that this is a place that they're proud of, that they own a piece of the action. And the easiest way I've ever found is open book management. I love Jack Stack and open book management, and just like, hey, these are the numbers, you guys. It's not like the Brinks truck is not backing up to my trailer.
Yeah, you're so spot on about that. And I remember a conversation with a team member many years ago when she was gently challenging some of the things that we were doing. And it was because her perspective was a narrow one. And when we opened the aperture and helped her to understand the bigger perspective that you need to consider, it was just really incredibly helpful at the time. One of the things I like about podcasting is that I get coaching. So I'm going to ask this question. One of the things that frustrates my business partner, like in many, many ways, is that he's like, why do I always have to be the bigger person? Like, why do I always have to be the one who? And I said, because you're the leader. Because followers don't inherently serve the leader. They just don't, right? Everyone serves their own interests. So I'm really curious. You say that you've worked in the nonprofit sector, and we're talking about a membership organization. We lead a very large membership organization, which is essentially a bunch of volunteers, right? They're all volunteering to be part of this organization and paying for the privilege. So when you're working with leaders in the nonprofit sector, what are the 2 or 3 things that you find are maybe blind spots for people that are leading troops of volunteers? Yes, it's such a great question. And my whole business is working with nonprofit sector leaders. So even though, I left the nonprofit sector as an employee, I built my whole management coaching is built around working with nonprofit organizations and their leaders. And I really appreciate your question, Virginia. I think that a couple of things come to mind to help you consider. One is to really think about why is it that they've come to the table? What is it that they want from the relationship and the experience? And if you can help them be clear about their why and help them think about how it connects to your why, then there's a way to find some common ground in there. I wonder what you think about that.
I do agree with that. I think the number one thing that I believe about leadership is that every human being serves their own interests. From you do, I do. We're on this podcast serving our own interests. We're doing it in collaboration, but it's got to be a win-win, or else why are we doing it? Otherwise, you're ending up into that martyrdom, codependence. There's a whole bunch of those, psychological issues. But no matter what we're doing, we're serving our own interests. And so it always is a matter of, how do I align my interests with yours? One of the things I do, particularly with team, is I use Vishen Lakhiani's most important questions, and then I make their dreams come true. So when they tell me, what do you want to experience in this year? Like this year, what are some things you'd like to experience? I'm going to do my best to make that happen. I'm going to build my business around what they want to experience, the growth trajectory that they want, and the contribution they want to make. Because when people are experiencing things they want to experience, and they're growing in a direction that serves them, that's self-proclaimed, and then they are being allowed, there's a space for them to contribute in the way that makes them feel happy, whole, and fulfilled, then you've got a winner. Now, if you tell me you want to experience this and you want to grow like that and you want to contribute like that, and I think that is not a win-win, like I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
Right? Then I'm kind of morally obligated to put out the bolo. Hey, I've got a great person who wants this and I can't give it to them. Who wants this person? you know? So
Yeah.
I do think that that's really important. So I generally like chunk this into two conversations, but I think I want to go down this road. Your network, when you are out networking, you're meeting partners, you're meeting new people, you're out at the chamber, whatever, your network is essentially, yet again, an army of volunteers. So when you think about your network, you're essentially kind of running a nonprofit kind of rubric, aren't you? When you're thinking about working with your network.
Yeah. Well, the thing that makes an organization a nonprofit, the main thing that makes an organization not a nonprofit is its tax status.
Right.
And the requirement that it have a volunteer board of directors.
Okay.
Other than that, nonprofit organizations are businesses like all other businesses and need to have they do have a mission that isn't financially focused, but they also have to have money in order to serve their mission.
Right.
So nonprofit organizations are primarily service oriented in what they're doing, helping people in lots of different ways, but they are still businesses. And so
Correct.
they're still businesses, and they need to think about all of the things that for-profit businesses need to think about. It's just that they don't have stockholders and the financial the financial resources that they receive or generate have to be invested back into the organization.
Yeah, and where I was getting at with the question, which I'm curious about, is that when you build a network of people that you're going to have as promotional partners, that you're going to have as contributing partners, and y'all are going to share your resources in order to make something happen, you're all very mission driven, right? And every person that you partner with has to share that mission and share those values, and you have to bring them along with you and serve their interests as well. So just like any volunteer staff or any team, because really when you work in most nonprofits, I don't think you're making like multiple six figures as someone who works inside a nonprofit. You do it because of the mission, and then you need to pay your bills. So that was sort of my point, was this notion of leading in a network, being a leader in your network or a leader of your connection seems very parallel to how you lead, that extra layer that nonprofits have, because you do have people that are coming along and providing you with support and maybe not getting paid. Yes, you need resources, but there are people that are fundraising for you. I sat on a board of a nonprofit for years and raised money, and I didn't get paid. I got love. I got a lot of love.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a paid board or anything like that. But I was all about the mission, and it was about turning women in developing countries into entrepreneurs with multiple revenue streams so that they could escape poverty, right? So they could liberate themselves from poverty. And I was really all about the mission. I loved that. And when we parted ways, we largely parted ways because the leader wasn't leading volunteers well.
Mm-hmm. Again, what you're saying resonates strongly. There are all sizes of nonprofit organizations, and they do pay salaries to staff and so forth. But all nonprofit organizations, no matter the size, do depend on pretty significant networking and relationship building. And it's a really important skill. I mean, just a quick story, but early in my career, I worked for an emergency shelter for runaway and homeless kids, and we had received a fairly sizable grant to build a shelter in southern Florida in a community where there wasn't one. And it was just incredibly wonderful to see how, when we reached out to the community and said, hey, we're coming here and we have this opportunity, can you help us? It was incredible, the network of people that stepped up. The city had a piece of land that had been left to the city that with a proviso that it would be used for children, and they didn't know what to do with it. And we just sort of stepped into that opportunity, and then lots of people volunteered services and resources, and the project came together, because of that network. There was certainly money involved, but it also came together because a lot of people stepped up, like you, to volunteer their time.
Yeah. And it's so appropriate to include them and incorporate them in even things like decision making, how things are being done, and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Because it's a learning opportunity for everybody who's participating. And you really don't know what, think about what's going to touch a person that you're connected to. Even if they're a volunteer, their volunteer experience may propel them into a future leader, a future opportunity. Creating a great experience for volunteers is a pathway into leadership. And leaders who create those great experiences get the resources that their organizations need.
Right. If anything were ever about relationship, it's not the nonprofit sector. What do you think when in your experience, I won't even ask what you think, because you've got a lot of experience behind you. What have you found that the number one missing skill set is in leaders that you've worked with? The thing they most need to learn?
Oh, what an incredible question. I'm going to answer it this way. The thing that I am working on and that I find is so critical is stress and emotional management.
Mm.
And it's I think a real core competency. It's not often listed on the core competency for leaders, but I really think that learning how to manage stress and manage emotions is a game changer for most leaders.
Tell me more about that. What are some of the things that you've encountered, and how have you been able to open space for people to grow in that area?
Yeah. So again, a little story, but when I was a young leader, I went to tell the person I reported to, the executive director, that I had made a decision that it was time for me to move on. And in a very public setting, I'd taken her out to dinner, and I'll never forget, she stood up in the restaurant and screamed at me on the top of her lungs and stormed out.
That would be an example of not managing your emotions.
Yes.
Just listener, in case you're not clear, that's not good emotion management.
Yeah, that is not. And she was a really impactful person, positively impactful person, in my career. And it took a lot of years to recover from that, that experience. And I think that leaders, the life of leaders is, it's very challenging every day. It can be very lonely. You can get to the office and have your day planned, and a fire starts and your whole day is upended. And then you get to the end of the day and you still have the things that you wanted to get to. And, it's just very challenging. Sometimes partners, are not pleasant. Sometimes people pull back from things when you least expected. And that's your emotions sort of are like the stock market. It's going up and down all day long. And in that process, you lose your ability to be as creative and as thoughtful as you would otherwise be if you weren't feeling that stress. And so, and because there's so much change in the world, because we're impacted by AI these days, by you name it, we're impacted by it. Change is, it's not like tomorrow we're not going to be, we're going to settle things and we're not going to change. And so that ability to regulate that up and down emotion all day long and shift from feeling like a victim to the emotion, or feel like you have to be a perfectionist and get all the answers right, that's going to be the thing that's going to fix the emotion. Or that, judging yourself, like, or I don't have what it takes to be a leader here, I'm not going to be able to solve this problem. Or judging other people and saying, geez, how could that have happened? What were they thinking? Why did they do this? Instead of like all of that kind of negative spinning, I think effective leaders have the spin for a minute. They say, okay, wait a minute. This thing just happened. This wasn't a good thing. Let me sit with it for a minute. And then they bring themselves back and say, okay, let me figure out what the opportunity in this challenge is. Let me understand how I can move this forward in a thoughtful way. But if you're sitting in the stress of it for a day, 2 days, 3 days, the problem grows bigger and you haven't figured out the opportunity. In the meantime, you're suffering, your team might be suffering, your business, your organization might be suffering.
I love that one of my spiritual advisor says challenge is inevitable, suffering is optional. Right? Like, it's an interesting conversation, even just taking that leadership, because I believe that in the program that I teach, what I say to everybody is like, you're the leader. So if you're sitting around waiting for people in your network to do things for you, understand that they don't really care about you. They care about them. So how do you get what they want in a way that you get what you want? Like, it's always about being the creative one about the collaborations. And I was in a conversation with someone because there's a person in my network whom I adore as a human being, right? Like, I adore this human, and they will make appointments with me. And if something more important comes along, and I'm not talking like, my dog just got hit by a car, or I have 102 fever and I have to go to the hospital. Not that. It's just sort of like, oh, my hairdresser had an opening, or a client called and wanted a meeting, or things that I deem as not okay reasons to cancel an appointment. And, it happened once, then it happened again, and then it happened again. And now I'm sort of finding myself not wanting to be in partnership with this person. And I stopped for a minute. I was having a conversation with a mentor, and the mentor got on my bandwagon. Like, yeah, you're right. That's really bad form. And then all of a sudden I realized, I said, you know why we think that? And he said, why? And I said, because you and I share the exact same values around time and commitment. And so that's great. But then I started really thinking about what is the real problem. There's nothing wrong with the person. They just have a different hierarchy or a different value of reasons why they can cancel an appointment. And those aren't my reasons for canceling an appointment or rescheduling an appointment. And now I have to think, like, immediately I have to think, is she aware that those reasons aren't, I would never cancel on you because my hairdresser called and said she had an opening. I wouldn't, because when I put you on my calendar, for me, that's written in cement. That's not even ink, Denise. It's like there was wet cement. We wrote it in cement. It dried. And the only way I'm going to get out of that is because I'm literally in an ambulance for some reason. And so, but then I started thinking about myself and how I'm a commitment keeper, and that's actually, as much as it's a good thing, it can also be a flaw. Like, sometimes I commit too hard and hold other people too hard to commitment. And so I'm sitting in this weird space where I'm like really mad. And then I'm like, wait a minute, what up with that? What is it clear? Are my rules clear? Are my standards clear? Are my expectations clear? Did this person even buy into those expectations?
Yeah. And you're asking really great questions. And what you so beautifully did there was you pivoted from the kind of saboteur, the negative emotion of like, do I have to control this situation, or does it have to exactly be the way I want it to be? Asking a lot of questions that might actually create a different kind of conversation about the relationship that you have, with this person. And that's from a sage. That's from a more, a more wise perspective. Now, it's entirely possible that it's not a good partnership.
Right.
And those kinds of questions don't preclude you from ultimately saying, we've talked about this, we come from a different perspective, and maybe it's better not to have a partnership. But then you also said, well, maybe this person really isn't even aware. And so the opportunity to talk about it might be actually eye-opening to them and
Mm-hmm.
contribute something to their development, their professional growth. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what my sense is, you're all about that. And so just by getting out of the negative emotion for yourself and looking at it from a different perspective, that's the kind of shift that I'm talking about when I talk about managing stress and regulating emotions.
Yeah. And I think it's from a networking standpoint, one of the number one things I hear from folks is, I give and give and give, and nobody gives back, or people say they'll promote me and then they don't keep their word, but like they have that frustration. And one of the things that I've learned, and I'll tell you what, I just had my 61st birthday, and I this is a new thing for me. I'm trying to instill it. Thank you. I'm trying to instill it in people half my age, right? Because I think I call us women of the third moon. Okay. We're in our queendom now. Yeah. And I think that when we get there, I'm super happy we live in a time when our age of queendom doesn't mean we're in a rocking chair with a Mrs. Beasley doll, right? Like that we're not knitting booties or whatever, which is, look, nothing against knitting baby booties. My grandmother did that to keep herself occupied. But there's this ability to impart what we've learned sooner in younger women, right? That where they don't have to do the emotion, they can learn the emotion management, and they don't have to make the mistakes that we made, right? And I find it to be really interesting that the biggest confrontation with a coach I ever had was with them. The question was, are you willing to turn to yourself? And I was like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Like, what does that mean? Like, turn to yourself. Well, what it really meant was, it was a nice way of saying, when will you stop playing the victim of the circumstances you create? Mm-hmm. So, and you can think that it's the external. It's like what everyone else is doing and they are the problem. But when you make it a relationship problem instead of an identity problem, you have zero control over the outcome of anything. When you ask yourself, who am I in this situation? Who am I with this partner? Who am I with this situation? And what were the choices that I got to make that got me into this boat? Because at some point I actually chose the boat. Now maybe it's just, I believed that the captain was taking me to X island and they took me to Y. So wait a minute, what does that say about me? Gullible. I believed somebody I shouldn't have. So shame on them for lying, but shame, me too. Maybe I need to hone my skills on discernment or whatever. It gives you just a unique spin on figuring out how to take people where they want to go.
Yes. Yeah. And it really is about our behavior, the choices that we each make as a leader, and the way we choose to behave, including how we're guiding ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that you're pointing out something that's really important, because leadership behavior doesn't just come from the external, it doesn't come from external forces. It actually comes from our internal core. We have to start there. And it's a lifelong learning journey. It's not like you can learn a practice and then it's going to solve everything every day. It's not. You have to keep investing in yourself. If you're choosing to be in a leadership role, I think that you have to keep investing in yourself, because there's always something new to learn.
Absolutely. I was talking with some leaders in our BNI franchise, and I was explaining to them, we use the Maxwell 5 levels of leadership, from positional to pinnacle leadership. And it was really interesting, because one of the things I said to them was, your job over the next year or two of leadership is to take this as a learning lab and to develop all of the skills at each level of this 5 levels of leadership ladder. But realize that when you're a pinnacle leader, in many, many ways, I've developed the skill set where I have the potentiality of pinnacle leadership at any given time. But that level of leadership doesn't only depend on my skill set. That level of leadership also relies on the relationship. So it's like people follow you because they're about what you're about. Okay, well, that doesn't only depend on me. It also depends on my relationship to the people that are following. And so when you have someone new come into an organization, they might come in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, doughy-eyed and thinking, Denice, I'm all about what you're about. But you're still a positional leader to me on day one. I'm going to do what you say because you're the person who tells me what to do. Not because I know you, trust you, like nothing. It's because I accepted the job. I came in and I said, I'll do what the boss tells me to do. And so even though you're a pinnacle leader by skill set, the missing element I find sometimes is, yeah, you're a pinnacle leader over here, but you don't have leadership relationship with people, and you're in a different place with every single person you lead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a really astute observation. And I'm guessing that, like at the pinnacle leadership level, you actually still you still are all those other levels of leadership too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And different situations are going to call for different pieces of that leadership. And being really aware of what each relationship requires and how you want to be in each relationship is a really important thing to consider.
Right. And then you have to manage all your emotions on top of it. This is why you need Denice, people. This is not simple stuff. This is like peopling and humans being human. It's crazy. Denice, talk to me about the trials and tribulations of client acquisition and like, what are you doing right now to grow your business and who do you need to know? And talk to me about.
Well, I love this question too. Our whole business, it got started on a relationship. Our first client came from a position, a job that I was in, and I used the network of relationships that I had in that job to create our first consulting opportunities. And some of those people are still incredibly important part of my personal and professional network. And so for the last 25 years, when I step back and really look at where all of the opportunities we've had have come from, 95% of them have come from a relationship that led to a referral or a personal experience that led to an introduction that said, this is the person that you should hire. The challenge, a challenging thing has been, I have tried for many years to be visible in the social media space. I don't do a great job of it. I try. I look at people who I have the impression that they've been really successful at doing it. And I've tried to emulate some of them. And yet, while I've tried that and haven't been as effective, the opportunities still come to us primarily by introduction and referral. And so that's one of the reasons why when this opportunity came up, I was really intrigued about having this conversation with you. It made me really think about that. My business partner, who has said to me over and over and over again, why don't you just keep going back to our former clients? Reach out to them, call them, talk to them, see what needs they might have. I'm introverted by nature, and so I just don't love the cold call. It's not really cold calling because they're people that I know, organizations that I know, but in some cases the leadership of the organizations have changed, and I may not actually know the person who's in the senior role, even though from a business perspective we had a relationship with them. Just being completely transparent, that idea of making phone calls and asking people how they're doing and what their challenges are now, it's not always comfortable for me, but when I do it, it always reaps rewards in very unexpected ways.
Yeah. So just on that, I got a really interesting email from a guy named Taki Moore, he's just an influencer in the coaching space that I follow, and I really like him. And he wrote this email today or yesterday about shame and how shame has really helped him form his business, because when things happen and he's like, oh, big, and like, I'm embarrassed, he's like, that really motivates me to clean it up and make sure I don't get that again. And he said, and the email went on to say that that's how he had built most of his business. But then somebody had challenged him to stop building on shame and start building on pride. Instead of thinking, oh, how do I get out of this like shameful situation? How do I get proud? And it was really interesting because I email him back. So I'm one of those engaged followers with him. And I was like, man, that's a great point. And he mentioned something about his website. And I was like, oh, I have website shame too, you know? And so one of the things that I started to think about with this social media thing is, here's what he said. He said, I don't know, I'm going to put all this money. This is the email back to me. He goes, I'm going to put all this effort and this money into this social media. Is it going to do anything for my business? Probably not. After all, social media is your website. So I was like, oh, social media is your website. So here's the thing about social media. I think you do need to produce some decent content in a place where your people are looking. I don't know that you need to be posting on TikTok. If you're posting on LinkedIn, like if you're on LinkedIn, that's so one space. And then maybe you repurpose stuff to YouTube because it's a big search engine, right? I think it's about that. And it's not about being, yes, you know, write a weekly article or something, whatever. But it's what's more important in that space is finding the people that you want to network with. So let's talk about, there's an organization and they've changed the leadership. So you don't really know the leader, but you know the organization. So you go out to LinkedIn and you connect with the leader. And the note that you connect with is you say, hey, I had a lovely relationship with your predecessor, Jane McGillicuddy. We did some really meaningful work together. So I thought I would connect here, so I could stay in touch with what's going on with the organization. I'd like to stay in touch with the organization. I want to keep seeing what's going on. Follow the organization, look at their posts, comment on their posts. Like, it's much more organic than just calling people out of the blue, right? Yeah. Because eventually they're going to notice that, oh, that Denice Hinden, she just keeps coming up dropping knowledge bombs here. Like every other time we post, she's like, this is a great idea. Have you guys thought about this? That's a very interesting concept. You know, I've also found this works. So you're dropping little breadcrumbs of expertise in there. It becomes easier to make the call, right? It becomes easier to say, hey, I've been enjoying your content, wondering if we could hop on a call. I'd like to catch up. So that you need more of a bridge, Denice, from, oh, look, Jane McGillicuddy's not there. Now it's Ben Friedman, but I don't know Ben Friedman, but I know the organization, but I have to get to Ben. So there's that, right? There's building that relationship over here is important. The other
great suggestion.
Yeah, because it works, and it does work. The other thing that I find brilliant, now I did not make this up, I stole it, okay? Which is, you say, Ben, I've been following you, you know, your posts, I'm loving keeping up, you know, I'm writing some articles on what's new with regard to topic that you mentioned in one of your posts, right? And I would love to get on a Zoom and talk to you about that. I would just love to feature you in one of my articles. Ultimately, Denice, what that does for you is this. You get them on the Zoom, just like we're talking right now. You're having a conversation. Chat GPT or Claude can come up with some great conversation questions, right? You just ask it to analyze Ben Friedman's LinkedIn and the LinkedIn of the organization and give me like 5 great interview questions, ask the great interview questions, create an article about it. And at the end of the conversation, just be like, hey, Ben, what are some of the challenges you're having right now? What do you need? What do you need? And maybe you're the person that he needs, or maybe you happen to know somebody that he needs. It really isn't about you at all. It's just about the need of the human. And, 2 to 3 times out of 10, you're going to pick up a client.
Yeah. Virginia, that is such a fresh idea, because I do a newsletter every month, and I usually review a book that like a recent book in the nonprofit space. And I usually include an article about something that my clients have brought up to me. And I just love the idea that you just gave me about following nonprofit leaders on LinkedIn and seeing what they're up to and what's challenging for them, and then connecting with them. It feels like such a natural and organic way for me to make connections. And I had not thought about that.
Yeah, it sounded to me like you just needed a bridge. Last tip for you, and then I have one more question for you. When you're posting those articles about the book, are you connecting and tagging the author?
So no, and I'm realizing, so I've just finished today my third one. And I was thinking about emailing the author with the review, but you're making an even bigger point that I need to be doing to make a connection.
I mean, the reality is here's the thing. If I have a book and you review my book and you put that out on LinkedIn and you don't tell me about it, I don't even know you did a nice thing for me. But if you take the time to read my book and then you write an article about my book, praising my book, or a book review on that, and then you tag me on LinkedIn and I see that I just got tagged in an article, now you're on my radar, right? And so I think that's really key. Now, if you, I don't know if you can, I don't exactly know if you can tag somebody that you're not connected to. So you might have to say, hey, Ben Friedman, I loved your book and I'd love to connect with you here. Just wrote a 5-star review for you. The other thing you want to do is post that review on Amazon. So if you read somebody's book, you need to go out to Amazon, take the article, have ChatGPT or Claude condense it to a 5-star review for the book, and put it on Amazon, because that's another big win for them. So now you've created at least 2 wins for them before you haven't asked them for anything, but you've created 2 big wins.
Yeah. Again, really great ideas, all of them, and I'm going to implement all of them.
Go, Denice. Yeah. Hey, so one of the things you mentioned earlier was how there are people and probably elements of ourselves that sort of sabotage our leadership and sabotage our success in accomplishing our goals and our missions. And you mentioned that you have a little ebook called 6 Tools for Disarming Saboteurs. Can you take, 60 seconds and just talk about that? Because we're going to put it in our gift vault for our listener today.
I'd be delighted to. So this ebook explains the importance of negative emotions. It describes 10 saboteurs that we all as human beings experience. It includes 6 tools. 1 tool helps you take charge of your emotions. 1 tool helps you think about how to turn obstacles into opportunities. 1 tool is called the 10% solution. And I'll just give you a little tip here. That's about how do you listen to someone who you're really disagreeing with, or a problem that you're having, and find the 10% right in what's being said or what's in that problem. Another tool is about how do you use our innate explore power, our power to be curious about things. So there's a tool for that. There's a tool called Listen to the Can'ts and You Won't, which is all about listening for the cans. So you will in a conversation. And there's a brainstorming tool, a kind of a fresh look at brainstorming.
It sounds incredibly useful. And while your expertise is really nonprofit leadership, I think that as a tool, I'm looking forward to downloading it because as a tool, we need all of those things just to people effectively in the world. Like that is adulting 101. We can use it as parents, we can use it as leaders of our organization, but a lot of solo entrepreneurs, we don't think of ourselves as being team leaders, but your network is your team. And are you leading them well? And this is a tool that you can use as a solo entrepreneur, practitioner, or consultant to start thinking about how do I lead the people in my life well so we all win instead of playing the victim, sabotaging our success, and wondering where the next collaboration is going to come from.
Well, I just love that you pointed out that everybody's a leader. And I subscribe to the definition that it's really that leadership is all about how do I influence myself and others to positive, productive action every day. And it doesn't have to be about being in a position of leadership. It's a mindset of leadership wherever you are in an organization or in your business.
That is a perfect note to wrap up this episode of the Business by Referral podcast. Thank you so much, Denice, for your time. This was a wonderful conversation that I just, from the bottom of my heart, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And to our listener today, be sure to go out to the gift vault and grab the 6 tools for disarming saboteurs, because you know you've got them in your network, you know you've got them in your world. May as well develop the skills. You'll be a happier person because challenges come and go, and suffering is always optional. And if you're wondering how to make more money with your network, be sure to go download the Business by Referral Blueprint. It's in the gift vault. It's also available at masterconnectors.com/blueprint. And until we meet again on the next episode of Business by Referral podcast, be remarkable.